Hello, this is Ben Schaefer, your host, and welcome to the 402 Arts Collective podcast, where you can learn about real artists who are on a journey to make the world more beautiful and impact the lives of those around them along the way. The 402 Arts Collective is a nonprofit organization dedicated to impacting the culture through the arts, and we want to invite you to hear the stories of how this impact is taking place. You can jump online and learn more about us at the402.org. That's THE402.org. If you find this content helpful in any way, I want to ask you to consider supporting us by becoming a monthly supporter through patreon.com. By supporting us financially at any one of our tiers we offer, you can make sure more content like this is produced, yes, but also scholarships, financial assistance, and mentoring programs are readily available to those in need within our community. Essentially, by giving up the price of 1 cup of coffee per month, you can remove the barriers to the next generation of artists. Find out how at our website. It's www.the402.org. Today on the 402 Arts Collective podcast, we have musician, songwriter, composer, teacher, artist. Oh my goodness, I'm getting winded. The list goes on and on. For a man named Danny Sabra, he's going to be on our podcast here as our guest. We've invited him. As you know, our goal with this podcast is to provide you, the listener, with an insider view of the life and times, the successes and trials, the ins and outs of being a musician, artist, or creator, creative, whatever you would like to call us. We particularly are interested in artists who have used their superpowers for good in this life. Chuckle, chuckle. Folks who use their gifts and abilities in the arts to help others. We want to spotlight these people, and today we want to spotlight Danny Sabra. Drum roll, please. Welcome to the podcast, Danny.
Hey, Ben. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I'm just so excited that I finally cornered you. You know, you're just like chasing a squirrel in the backyard. You know, it's like, I don't know why I just said squirrel, but you know, weird.
Well, you know, I'm going so many places with this COVID lockdown, you know, I'm all over the globe hopping right now.
Yeah, you're so social, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, gosh, Danny, some people know you in the Midwest. Some people don't. I'm hoping that some more people get to know you because I think you do a wonderful. I'm gonna blow up your head. I hope your stocking hat's like gonna expand a little bit because I'm gonna brag on you a little bit. We've been friends for a long time, obviously, but I want to just kind of talk about what you have going on in your life right now. Some projects specifically that you've been coming out with. You did come out with. We're gonna get to that in a second. But first, Danny, let's tell these people a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where were you raised? How long have you been doing what you do? Give us just a little snapshot about Danny Sabra.
Yeah, so, you know, I tell people born and raised in Omaha. I've pretty much lived here my whole life, and I love it. You know, you go on vacation, you go to other places, but I really do. I love Nebraska. I love Omaha. And yeah, you know, I think a lot of people know me as a musician and an artist and a teacher. And yeah, I think that's how we first met, Ben, was kind of in the Omaha music scene and things like that. So yeah, I've had like some chances to move out of town, but you know, I really love the scene here, the community here, and my family's here. And so yeah, Omaha, Nebraska, born and raised.
So you went to school, UNO, right?
Yep.
So how long did you do that, and what was that like, man?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. You know, in high school, my two passions were athletics and music, and really, you know, I kind of grew up, I would say around the age of 12, I started taking violin lessons and doing the youth orchestra and all of those things. And then later on in high school, got a guitar, started writing songs and things like that. And so, yeah, when it came time to pick a degree, you know, it just kind of felt like a natural continuation of what I had been doing. And so I went to UNO to study music. And really, it was kind of a coin flip for me on if I should do the violin route or if I should do the guitar route.
Mm.
Um, but at that time, I had been playing violin a little bit longer, and honestly, I was just this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid who didn't know anything, and so I just said, "What the heck? Let's try violin," not even really knowing what music school was, to be honest with you. Um, when I auditioned, they said, "Oh, by the way, do you wanna be music education or music performance?" And I didn't
Mm.
even know that those were 2 different things. I was like, "I don't know." And, they're like, "Well, let's start you out in music ed, and if you hate it, you'll know right away," and blah, blah, blah. And so, I ended up kind of getting a lot of the best of all worlds through that. Through my bachelor's degree, I started out in music education and kind of learning some of those, um, um, ideas and things. And then eventually down the line, I kind of decided that I wasn't so sure if I wanted to be a school teacher.
Yeah.
And so I switched my major to violin performance at that time, and I really had some great, really in the back of my mind, this whole time I was playing guitar, I was playing the coffee shops and bars and kind of in the music scene, putting out albums, and I had this thing in the back of my mind that really what I loved to do was to write music, not just play violin concertos, but I loved writing, and I had some really great music theory professors who kind of put that bug in my ear. Would you ever think about studying music composition? And I said, well, I have thought about it. And so they kind of convinced me to do a double major at that point. And so I ended up, it took me 5 years instead of four, but I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in violin performance and one in, they call it music theory, but it was basically music composition.
Wow.
So yeah, I ended up getting a wide variety of education from UNO, and I really, you know, look back fondly on those teachers. They had a big impact on me.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you probably deserve a shingle on the inside of the UNO door that says
Oh, they don't want me there anymore.
they don't want you. They don't have like a coffee mug with your name on it.
They don't. They don't. I mean, I ended up going back, a few years out of college. They
Mhm.
reached out to me, and I became adjunct faculty
Oh, that's
for
awesome. Yeah.
for a year, which was really great experience. And then I think it was just cheaper for them to have me be a student than to pay me as faculty. And so they said, why don't you just become a master's student here? Why don't you get a graduate degree? And so
Great.
that wasn't even something I was trying to do, but I ended up going back a second time, and it was a totally different learning experience. But I ended up studying music composition there as well for the master's degree, and got to tutor a lot of people. I got to work with a bunch of people who ended up becoming artist instructors. Emily Boganowski and people like that. I used to
That's
work with
right.
them at UNO. Jameson.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of those UNO connections that are coming to the 402, and it just kind of feels like a nice
Yeah.
continuation.
Yeah, we get a lot of through the years. It's almost been 10 years now. Seems like we've had a lot of people from UNO come and say, "Hey, I want to do this. I've graduated. Now what?" And
Right.
I think that kind of leads me to this next question of, if you're going to talk to an aspiring artist right now, 18, 19-year-old, just graduating, haven't graduated, and they're on the other side. They're pre Danny, pre you. They're a young version of you. God help them. No, I'm just joking. What would you have as far as a suggestion on pursuing their education? Would you send them to UNO? I mean, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but would you send them to a college, or would you send them to the music scene? What do you say? What would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think everybody has to make that decision for themselves,
Right.
because you learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think one of the most valuable things that you'll get from going to music school is the network of
Yes,
connections, of
exactly.
getting to know people.
Yeah.
Um, you also, to a certain extent, will be able to brush up against other disciplines,
Yeah.
and so for me, it wasn't just knowing violin players, but it was knowing trombone players like Pat Peters, or cellists like Megan Seeby, or getting to um, 1 year, because of the degree program, I had to be in the UNO marching band, and so I had to learn how to play the drums and march. And so
Mhm.
you get a wide variety. It's almost
Yep.
like a buffet.
Yeah.
And so I think that is probably like the strongest asset. On the other hand, I had a teacher in college who said, if you want to be a professional violinist, drop out of school and just practice all day. And I think that there can be a kernel of truth to that too, that if you're just have this single-minded focus on wanting to be a performer, especially in what we call, the performance arts, especially
Yeah.
in those sort of elite levels of classical music or jazz, or, anything that's going to be in a performance hall,
Hmm.
then, they're not going to look at your CV in terms of how many degrees you have. They're going to look at it in terms of how well do you play.
Yeah.
You could be just hillbilly Joe from the sticks, but if you play good, you're hired.
Yeah.
And so I think you kind of have to think about those things. And the truth of the matter is, you're never really stuck. If you go that performance route, you go, oh, I don't want to, take algebra 2. I just want to play my instrument. And
Right.
then later on you change your mind, you can always go back. There
True.
were people, middle-aged people, who were doing that. When I was, a freshman, there were middle-aged men and women who were also freshmen starting from scratch, and there's no prejudice against that. And vice versa. I know a lot of people who've gone through the programs and they decide they want a career change, or they want to do this or that,
Yep.
and they go back and do it. So really, in today's economy and with the internet age and information age, I think it helps to just be able to do a lot of things, be willing
Right.
to do a lot of things.
That's good advice right there. I mean, I think I tell my kids all the time, like talent, talent, talent. I mean, it sounds like I'm being crass, I think, but I think one of the biggest lessons that I see even in your life is the school that you go to. Yes, it gives you experiences, it gives you the network and the relationships, but ultimately it comes down to you and the relationships and what you make of it, and
Yeah.
relationships that you foster in those networks. You know what I mean?
And it's, I think, if we're just talking about the creative field in general, it's a lot of it is how hard do you want to work and how
Yeah.
bad do you want it.
Oh,
If
that's good.
you want it, then you can get it, but I think for a lot of people, school can actually be good in that regard. I'll tell you, when I was in high school, I didn't practice, just
Yeah.
like a lot of my students don't practice. And it was really when you got into that high intensity uh situation in music school, it was a lot more cutthroat. People were a lot less nice.
Yeah.
They're not going to hold your hand. They would not shy away from cussing you out or embarrassing you in front of other people if you didn't, do your due diligence, and if you weren't at the top of your game. And I think, that's the other thing, is that's not for everybody, and it isn't always very fun.
True.
And so you kind of have to ask,
Yeah.
why am I doing this for? And
Mm.
I think for creative people, there's a million different reasons to do it, and none of them are wrong.
Right.
So don't feel like, oh, I have to go to Berkeley and, get all of this prestige if that's not what's driving you, And I honestly, we could talk about this too. I don't know that that's the most valid reason to do it for. I don't know that the world needs more cutthroat, ruthless, cruel musicians.
Yeah.
I think we might be set on that, and
We
you
could.
might yeah, you might actually make a difference if you end up being like a true pure human spirit who's creating, and maybe it's not as fancy as those Ivy League schools or whatever, but you
Right.
might touch more lives that way. So
Yeah, right. And that kind of leads me to my next question. What do you um I mean, I just see Danny Sabra as, I don't know, one of these homegrown, don't take offense to this, but you are a product of this culture. You are a Midwestern grown creative.
yeah.
Your parents are here. You were born in this environment. You were raised in this environment. You drank the water and the Kool-Aid, and here you are. So, what you talked about the why. So, why did you do it?
I think for me, um, just even as like a little kid, music was this spark for me
Mhm.
that I just became kind of obsessed with it. And kind of like you said, those that nuclear um, elemental aspect of seeing my grandpa and my uncles play music, around the
Oh,
holiday times.
yeah.
And as a small child, my mom was kind of a semi-professional musician and opera singer and
Wow.
piano player at church and all of those things. And I have this very sharp memory. I was probably like 4 years old, and I decided I wanted to write music. And I would, with my little crayon, write these scribbled
Oh
things
my
that looked like a quarter note or something. And then I would go, "Mom, look at it." And she would go, "Wow." And then she would sit down at the piano and play this masterpiece. And I'm like, I'm a genius. But I mean, it just filled me with so much delight. And I think just to see, my parents making music, my uncles, my grandparents, everybody in my family, it seemed like did music. And so it just felt like this thing that I wanted to do too. And I don't know, I never turned my back on that.
Yeah, you didn't become an insurance salesman. I mean,
I
you
think about it sometimes.
maybe you thought of it. Yeah. I mean, this is not the easier road for sure, and
Right.
I think you can testify to that. But I just know, I mean, you when you've talked to me enough, I nerd out about surveys and tests and research done, and I've put out a couple of these things. But yeah, it is fascinating to see the amount of young people, and when we're talking about youth development relationships here, the amount of people like you who are now like middle age, whatever, if you survey them.
I'm still young. Come
I
on.
mean, you youngin. I mean, sorry, I'm old, you're young.
Yeah.
Uh, if you would say, if you would take this survey and say, well, who was influential in asking that question and the why,
Right.
you would most people point to no more than four people in their
Hmm.
life when they were in that youth developmental stages, and it's hilarious to see how little effort was put out and how big shifts were made in their lifetime. And I mean, those relatives sitting there playing on the piano, and your mom, she's just being a mom. I mean,
Right.
she's not going, oh, I need to take a minute and I need to strategically impress him to be a musician someday.
Right.
But there are these pivotal moments where a creative spark is fanned into flame, and that is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's different for every person, but yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I push a lot, in my teaching and just talking with people is, if you feel, a lot of people I talk to are, middle age, sometimes even retirees,
Mhm.
and they go, is there any hope for me? Am I ever going to be good? Should I do this? There's a lot of insecurity there. And I really say, like, man, just go for it. Just you want to try and learn guitar, just try it. You want to pick up, pencil sketching or something, just go for it because you never know that impact of inspiration that you're going to spread, those seeds that you're going to plant for your kids, your grandkids, the neighbors' kids, or whomever, your spouse, that they'll go, wow, I can't believe it. And I've had, the true honor to get to work with some people and kind of be alongside them as they go on that journey where they're like, I want to surprise my husband for our 25th anniversary and learn how to sing this song for them. And we'll like sit down and work on that. And just like you can see in slow motion the ripple effect of the love and the care and the attention that they put into learning something and how it inspires other people to
Yeah,
think, hey, maybe I can do, maybe it's not the same thing, maybe it is, but just to believe in themselves and to think
yeah,
maybe I can do it. um and so I guess I'll brag on my mom with this little story because it's just such it fits in so nicely. When my mom was in college, she was working at a nursing home, I guess,
mhm,
and one of her friends at the nursing home was studying to become a nurse, and mom was kind of studying to do some music. And then fast forward 20 plus years or whatever, and I'm in college. And it just so happens that one of the opera singers, teachers, professors at UNO when I was in school we came out of a concert and she bumps into my mom and tells her, "Do you remember me?" And she was this nursing student at the nursing home who was inspired by my mom singing to go on then and learn opera singing and get her degree. And now she's a PhD, professor at my school teaching me. And
What?
so it was just this crazy thing that, my mom, just by being a singer, inspired her coworker at their job that had nothing to do with music to
Wow.
go, maybe I could do that. And then she went, all this long way, and it kind of all came full circle. And so you
Cool.
really, I always think, even it's not for you. I tend to think if like you've got blood in your eyes and you're like, I want to be the next Justin Bieber and make $1 million or whatever. I tend not to encourage that because how many of us can claim that. That's
Exactly.
it's like being born the Prince of England. Only
Right.
a few people are born like that. But if instead of looking for like what can I get out of it, you have this, maybe what you want to get out of it is like that pursuit of beauty or
Hmm.
truth or whatever, and you look to give back to other people or just believe in yourself enough to know that you are worth trying it out and you can give back. I think you can see amazing things happen, even
Hmm.
if it's just your spouse or just your kids. I mean, who would say that, right? Just my spouse, but my
Exactly.
kids. You're going to touch somebody's life, you're going to give them a beautiful moment, and that's kind of what life's all about, I think.
Man, do we need that? I hope somebody's hearing this, because I mean, my biggest challenge as an artist, I mean, uh, very similar, was to set achievable waypoints for my why. Like, I know that sounds confusing probably, but like I remember holding my first child and thinking to myself, why did I waste 10 years of my life? And of course, I didn't waste it, but I spent 10 years of my life trying to achieve the world, trying to
Yeah.
chase after something. And I just realized, like, I should have set my sights at something more like realistic. I mean,
Hmm.
and I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but I think your self confidence is a huge deal. And so, what do you think is the biggest? This is another question, but we talk about this all the time as buddies here throughout the years. But what has been some hurdles for Danny Sabra in the Midwest? Like, we talked about some influencers in your life and who sparked and the animating engine inside of you. But what are some of the hurdles that you've come across as a Midwestern artist?
Well, I think that um, culturally, there's this idea that the Midwest isn't as good as
Mhm.
the coasts,
Yes.
especially when it comes to artistic um, endeavors. And this is a really complicated subject because I think we've talked about this before, but I actually think that it's developing and changing, obviously, because of the internet. And so, when 10 or 15 years ago, you could say that New York and LA and Nashville were like the hot spots. And if you were going to make it, you had to make it there. And now I think, when you look at the landscape, that isn't as true. And I would almost say borderline isn't true anymore.
Agree.
But it just kind of depends, depends on that. But I think that there is this idea that everybody struggles with. You could be born in LA and still struggle with this idea, because I just think it's a human aspect of thinking that maybe I'm not good enough. You write all of these songs, you set up a show, and then not as many people come to the show,
Yep.
or you play your song even for your family member, and they're not as jazzed about it as you are. And
Hmm.
I just think this is just part of being a human being. You really put yourself out there, um, you know to use a metaphor, you're really like strip yourself bare,
Yep.
and if it's very vulnerable. And I see this a lot with a lot of my students. They're very nervous,
Yeah.
to even for me, even to play a song for me, for a
Yeah.
teacher or something. They're very nervous and insecure, and I totally get it. And to me, I think that's the more interesting and compelling, sometimes tragic story that we live as creatives is you're really on this um, hero's quest, so to speak, to kind of grapple with and overcome um, this this insecurity.
Yeah.
And I see having rubbed shoulders with people who are at a more elite level than me, and gone through these different stratas of the entertainment business or whatever.
Right.
There's a lot of ways that this can destroy you, where
Oh, yeah.
either you become totally consumed by your ego, you think you're God's gift to humanity, right? You start treating people like crap, like we were saying,
Yep.
or it crushes you. You think that you're a nobody, there's no point in trying, this is a huge waste of time, it's not even worth
Yeah. What's the
bothering for, and I
point?
want to give up. What's the point? Yeah. And so to me, it is this big monster. I think every single one of us will face at some point.
Yep.
And some of us face it the whole way through. Sometimes there's a big breakthrough for people, but I really do see this as something that I'm still struggling with. You know, all of these shows later, all of these thousands of songs. I'll even just say to my students, I still get nervous even just for teaching a lesson. For students I've had for years, there's always that little bit of anxiety. What if they think I'm
Yeah.
not a good teacher? What if they think
Hmm.
this? What if they think that? And
Man.
yeah, that's the thing. It's a communal thing, Ben. You know this. There's a relationship there. You're communicating,
Yep.
and it's like going on a first date every single time. And
Yeah.
there's what are they thinking? Are they going to like it? Are they not going to like it? And we've talked about this, but you kind of have to find your way to the light, which is to do it um, for a bigger reason,
Yeah. The
for
bigger.
someone bigger than you,
Yeah.
to play for an audience of one, and do
Yep.
those things where it's not self-aggrandizement, it's not for yourself, and to accept yourself. That's something I still work on, to accept that you're not going to be number one and you're not number zero. You're worthwhile. The things you have to say, the lens that you view the world through is beautiful and meaningful because God made you, and there's
Yep.
only one of you.
There's only
And so
one you.
you
Yeah.
don't have to be somebody else. You
Mhm.
just have to be you. And I think that's probably the hardest thing we can do as creative people. But that's the goal. The more you become yourself, the better a great artist or creative you will be. And I think you see that. You can look at um, Miles Davis, Nat King Cole,
True. True.
whoever you want to look at. The more that they became themselves, the more they really change the world, and so
Right. Yeah.
that's what I preach to people. But it is hard because you don't want to be yourself, you want to be that awesome guy over there,
Yeah,
and so
yeah, and I think it just popped in my head. It's the term finite or infinite. It's like the infinite game versus the finite game. I think there's a book about that or something, but
yes,
I should read it. But it has something to do with that, where if you set finite goals as an artist, you go obtain it, and then you're looking around and you're asking yourself, okay, now what do we do? Oh, I need to set another finite goal. Okay, that we do that in business all the time, but very rarely do we operate on the infinite game. That's the overarching meta narrative of your life, and
right,
asking the question is, what is my whole life going to say? What's the song of my life, instead of just the stanza? You know what I mean?
exactly. Well,
um,
you think about a musician like Johann Sebastian
yeah,
Bach, who was basically a school teacher and a church organist in a small town and had no major fame in his lifetime, and yet now, after he's dead, he's basically considered the greatest musician of all time, right? And so he had to have done it for some reason other than that, because he didn't
exactly.
he didn't reap the fruit. And I love his story because at the bottom of every piece of music he wrote, SDG, Sola Dei Gloria, to the
Oh
glory of
man,
God, and
so good.
yeah, and I think that's just worthwhile. You have to think about, like you said, that meta narrative, the big um, trajectory, and I think that makes it worthwhile.
Man, that's incredible, man. I promised you not to like blow your time here today. So I wanted to give a couple more things. First off, hold on. Let me share something with the viewers. I wanted to share something. You see this, everybody? I think they can see this. It's the album cover of Danny, Sabra, and Friends. Now, Danny, tell us a little bit about this. You just came out with a new project, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the podcast is for so you can tell everybody about this, because this is so incredible. You see all those names on that cover? That's like how many people were involved with this. Am I right, Danny?
Yeah, this was, I guess you would say, an orchestra slash band that I
The biggest
comprised.
band I've ever seen.
It really was, and yeah, they were made up of friends of mine, and I painted that album artwork. But
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, it was. I got this idea when I was in school. I was almost living a double life. That I was, playing guitar, writing these indie folk rock songs,
Mhm.
and that was like my secret life. And then I'm playing, Mozart symphonies or whatever at school,
Jekyll and
and
Hyde.
exactly. And I really, I think one thing that is a big turnoff for me is elitism. I don't like gatekeeping and saying,
Mhm.
you're not valid to me. Like
Right.
I always believe like everyone is valid, and not to judge people by the way they look or where
Mhm.
they're from or anything like that. And so to me, even just that there's these two worlds that we perceive, that there's like, classical music, which is up here,
Yeah,
and
man.
folk music, which is down here. I don't really care for that. And I guess the idea popped into my head that, I mentioned it, like Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, that kind of era, that was pop music.
It's so true.
It was pop music, and they were playing with orchestras and everything like that. And I
Mhm.
really started to think, like, what is classical music? Is it classical music if you have a string section and a brass section and a woodwind, or like what is it that makes it classical? What is it that
Mhm.
makes it supposedly this highfalutin fancy thing where we have to
Yeah.
wear a tuxedo to hear it, versus folk music, which is just for the people or whatever. And so I started to pursue that. Like, what if I wrote songs like these, indie folk songs that I'm writing, but I also took all this learning that I was getting in school, music composition, and I wrote for an orchestra. And the other thing that kind of compelled me to do this was um, I was almost getting tired of just writing songs on my guitar. That I could,
I
I,
know
I
the
could,
feeling, man.
I could just sit down and, 10, 15, 20 minutes later, you have a little idea. And
Yep.
I started to wonder, like, is am I cheapening? Is this like too easy? Is this too cheap? Um, and so this project was born out of that. What if instead of spending 15 minutes on a song, I spend 15 weeks writing a
Mhm.
song, and really like pouring over the instrumentation. And so it was a combination of that, and also like having been in so many groups and trying to get people to play with me, and then right when we were going to get successful, they would dump me for like some more popular band or something. And so finally I was like, I want total control.
Yes.
I don't want to be dependent on like having this project and then having them bail or whatever. And so I wrote basically these orchestral pieces, string quartet, woodwinds, brass, and then rock instrumentation, piano, drums, keyboard, and all of that stuff.
So you wrote like so those of you who are just tuning in, you I mean, Danny is a composer. Okay, so just to make sure you guys know that the difference between a songwriter and a composer, there's a big vast difference, to me at least. I write songs with a journal, my pencil, and scribble some chords. Okay, set that aside. Now picture Danny on staff music with a pencil writing notes in those stuff.
Yes.
Danny, that's what Danny does. And so you're telling me, Danny, that you took, how many years did you say this took you?
So this took 10 years from like beginning to completion.
That's
Um,
amazing.
And I really, I probably could have put it out faster than that, but kind of to circle back to that insecurity, I had this idea like, is it good enough?
Is it
And
good
I need to,
enough?
yeah,
Yeah.
I need to work on this and tweak this thing and everything. And so the whole process was kind of a cathartic journey for me of trying to make something the best that I could make it, and then going
Oh,
through the darkness of not being sure and not knowing what to do with it and thinking it's not good enough, I shouldn't do anything with
yep.
it. And so that whole process took 10 years of my life, before I finally just got to a place and said, let's just do it, just
Yep.
put it out there and do it. But yeah, you're right. I was trying to meld that, sit down with the guitar, scribble some chords on a piece of paper with the same thing that I was doing when I was writing an orchestra piece or a
Yeah.
choir piece. And you're writing, like you said, individual notes, or the trombone is going to play right here, and then the clarinet comes in and plays this scale and stuff like
What
that.
kind of magical experience was that when you got your friends in the room, shoved sheet music in front of them, and the trombone's sitting there, and he's blowing your line. I mean,
Yeah,
that has to just
it was exhilarating, and to me that's the best thing about being a composer. It's just I mean, I don't have kids, but it's the closest thing I can imagine to like having your child be born,
yeah, it's
uh
similar. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a little bit like this almost out of body experience, because before it's played, it's just something that lives in your head.
Yeah, it's
And
just
then
on a piece of paper and it's in
yeah,
your head and yeah.
and then
Mm.
the other thing about having other people play your music is like, they are the masters of their instrument. They're
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't play a trombone, I can't play a clarinet. So to have this abstract concept then be embodied by a team of people, yeah, it's one of the best feelings in the world. I think it's
Dude,
really cool.
you're preaching a sermon on humanity, man. I mean, just the whole idea of like different races and ethnic backgrounds and upbringings and culture. How indicative is that of what you just described? I mean, how cool is it when everybody comes together? I think of the word university, like unity in diversity.
Hmm.
Man, I just think so. Man, you get me goosebumps when you talk about this stuff. Man, okay, so I'm trying to wrap it up here. How can people support you, Danny? And I think this is where you're going. I don't know if you can see this, but I pulled up your Bandcamp. Danny, tell the listeners how best to support this project.
Yep. So if you want to help support me, you can go to dannysabra.bandcamp.com, and you'll see my album there that you can purchase and listen to. But it's also on all the streaming platforms. So if you want to listen to it on Spotify,
Cool.
Amazon, Apple Music, all of the big platforms, you can do that as well. And for me, really, the big goal is I just want people to listen to it and hopefully, get something out of the music. I think you and me, Ben, can both relate to that. At the end of the day,
Yep.
we put it out there because we just want to share this experience. So I'm so my life was changed by all of these friends. That's why I had to paint their names on the album cover,
So
because
cool.
none of it would have been possible without all these people who I said, will you play music with me? And they all said yes. So
Yeah,
uh,
man.
I think, yeah, it speaks to community, and if we support each other and gather around each other,
Yeah.
what crazy things can be accomplished. And yeah, I hope they find a song on there that means something to them, because um, it was really a long labor of love, and hopefully I'll get to do something like that again someday.
And I want to be on your next project. Okay, I
I
just
would
want,
love that.
even if it's just like the tambourine or something.
No,
Uh,
well, I have to say this. We did a gig once at church, and then you had
yep.
to go play piano, and I'm like, Ben can play piano, and it was like the most beautiful thing I ever.
I
And and it's
got some
like,
secrets.
yeah, there's probably nothing you could play. I mean, I'll be like, Ben, do you play saxophone? And you come out just, you know.
Sure, man.
So
Yeah, you never know, man.
yeah, the next
But
one will just be
yeah,
Danny Sabra and friend.
and
Just be,
friend, man. Yeah, just
yeah,
yeah. Man, I actually listened to the whole thing the other day, and you guys should too, because my favorite was actually Bells of Remembrance. I don't know
Mm,
why. I just totally resonated with that one. And then
awesome.
Early Dark. Um, just just strumming some crazy chord, pardon the expression, in my soul. But I think you, more than anything, I just really appreciate what you accomplished and what you continue to accomplish. You're doing like painting now. You're doing visual art. You got an Instagram channel. Where can people find you there?
Yeah, it's
Your YouTube channel.
Instagram at Danny Sabra. Yeah, I do the YouTube channel and I talk a lot about creativity and do music and painting and things on there. If you just search for Danny Sabra,
Yep.
but yeah, I really appreciate that, Ben. I think for me, if I can just encourage other people to write songs, to use their creative voice to go out and try to put something meaningful, something truthful, something beautiful back into the world. I think the world needs that.
It
We
does.
desperately need more of that. And I think, it's not like I said, I don't like elitism. So,
Yeah,
banish the thoughts that that's just for the special people, talented, rich, whatever.
absolutely.
Anybody can do it, and we need each other to speak these things to each other through our music, through our art, through our dance, through our writing. And I think that's this is the time to do it. Today is the day. So
Danny, you're going to be, I'm going to have to invite you to the next 402 Arts Collective Gala to be our keynote speaker because you always speak right out of our bylaw playbook or something. I mean, it's just like you're nailing it, man. So
nice.
I appreciate you being around. He's also teaching here at the Arts Collective. We have a lesson studio program, and he teaches guitar, violin. I think you do underwater basket weaving now.
Yep.
And something else. I don't know. But check him out on the 402 lessonstudio.org. He's there with his pretty face. Learn more about that. Danny, thanks again for coming on board. I'm going to let you go so you can get on with your day. But thanks for listening, those who are out there, and go check out Danny Sabra. Thanks for listening. For more episodes and stories, be sure to subscribe. If you've enjoyed today's content at all, please consider joining the Patron Collective and becoming a monthly supporter at any level. Learn more by going to www.the402.org or shoot us an email at info@402artscollective.org. Have a blessed day.